Hey guys, Colby here. Welcome back to Warcraft Rumble. Thank you, Warcraft Rumble, for sponsoring today's video and the channel. So guys, today we're going to talk about the top 10. Well, it's not a normal top 10. It's basically a bottom 10. It's the 10 units that I think are the ones that need the most amount of love in this game in order to get more balance out of the game. And maybe these minis are the ones you should be avoid upgrading, avoid using, avoid buying talents for, because it's just going to stall your experience within the game. It's going to stall your experience and make it less enjoyable, I would say. So maybe just avoid these units in terms of upgrades, or use them very sparingly. Do not go out of your way to upgrade them. Just enjoy them in maybe some random decks that you might find here and there to play them out, but don't go out of your way to level these ones up, as I do think they need a little bit more love in terms of balancing to make them up to par with some of the other much stronger minis. So let's get started. Number one in this number one in terms of and the first one I will say I do not use this at all is the living bomb. The living bomb spell, I do not use this. This is such a high cost of six very high cost, compares it to much tankier units that we have otherwise. And it's a spell where you plant a bomb on a group of enemies that all blow up in excessive collateral damage. So the closer they are together, the more damage you'll be doing. This can have its uses, but the fact that it costs 6 in order to apply it, I think just screams, please use something else. There's so much better spells that can, let's say the blizzard spell that can actually freeze and do it like a big AoE, that is much more comparable, much more useful to drop down on the board. I would say living bomb just doesn't feel like something that you could use. There are some use cases, maybe with the leader here with General Drankitath, where he basically forces enemies nearby to take more elemental damage. So maybe you can accompany those together, but imagine a 5 cost and then a 6 cost spell to just clear the board. It seems very difficult to actually get through, and you also need to have Dragon's, you know, somewhere close in order to get that extra benefit. So makes it a not so usable mini, in my opinion. Well, not mini, but basically like a spell. Next one up, it's gonna be Arcane Blast. So this spell is actually very cool, very interesting, but I feel like it's a little bit of it's a little bit underwhelming in terms of how often you can use it. It has a very low cost of 1. Okay, hear me out though. It's not that strong on 1 cost. So once you use it up, you can actually use it again on enemies with a 2 cost. And then if that doesn't kill them, you use it at a 3 cost. So you can actually apply a lot of pressure on the board with using all that cost. But just count with me: 1 plus 2 plus 3, that's 6 cost to actually clear the board. And that usually is 2 very strong units, or 1 strong unit plus another more weaker unit that you can get on the board and actually clear the enemies or apply pressure. Then maybe have one of the minis standing by the end of that and then proceed to push a little bit forward. So Arcane Blast can be useful in specific situations, and also you have very specific talents on it. But I do feel like it's, again, a little bit more underwhelming than anything else that we have. Spells in this game in general feel like they need a little bit more balancing in order to compare with the actual presence of a mini on the board. So spells, I think, are in general just a little bit of underutilized and not so often seen in the top 10 most competitive decks within the game. Spiderlings. The Spiderlings is the next one I want to talk about. It feels like it's strong, but it's not that strong for a 2 cost unit. I mean, you can compare it to other 2 cost units currently that we have. It feels like it should do some work. Even their showcase right here is against the unit that does not hit back. These are very squishy units, can die very quickly, and they do not even do that big amount of poison damage. Their poison does help to bring down tanks, but it's very specific. The use case for this is very specific, and some tanks that can hit them back will just completely eliminate these small spiders very quickly. It just feels like they should have done something better with this one. Maybe the talents on them need some love in order to make them more interesting. The frost seems good, but I think they still need something else to make them as powerful as they could be. The Mountaineer, my god, this is the unit that I've used the least in this game, but I even have him evolved over to uncommon. I just do this in general in order to get my my account level higher, but he feels like such an underwhelming unit. The bear feels stronger than this guy. He hits for such little amount of damage. I just feel like he needs a little bit of love in terms of the unit's damage. Okay, it's like you're putting 2 units down the board, but remember, this is a 6 cost unit that can also basically you have a tongue, and then you also have a ranged unit that attacks. But the problem with this one is just it doesn't do a lot of damage. With a 420 DPS, just doesn't feel like it's doing a lot of damage on the board. Even if I have it as an uncommon at a 6 cost, it's just not there. It's not enough. It thinks I think it just needs maybe to drop its cost to 5. Maybe that's when it's gonna have real usefulness and real power, comparing it to other high cost units, other high cost leaders even, where you drop them at a 5 cost or 6 cost and just completely dominate the field for the duration that they're on. But this one is just a very high cost for it. I think it definitely needs to drop down to 5 maybe. Vultures, what can I say about the vultures? Very low cost unit. It is a flying unit that can actually attack the targets a little bit. I find its usefulness very limited. It needs to get some kills through in order to have a big flock of the vultures available. It's not that easy to get the kills through. You got to be attacking targets that can be taken down by the vultures, and the fact that their DPS is very low, obviously because they're 1 cost, it will just take them so long to actually get a kill through, that it feels very situational when you're gonna throw these against maybe an enemy goblin, you know, to take that one out, then have 3 vultures down on the board, then maybe attack another unit. If you're fighting something that can kill flying units, the vultures are gone. They're dead. Forget about them. There's no chance these are surviving. You only lose 1 cost, of course, but I just haven't seen a deck out there that utilizes these ones successfully and makes use out of these vultures. So maybe try something else. The Plague Farmer is the next one that I feel is very underwhelming. It has some use, but you need to have a tank up there in the front for them to do something useful. You just throw the pumpkins. The pumpkins are poisonous and they do damage. All right, it seems very easy. The DPS seems okay. It's an area damage, but it still feels underwhelming comparing it to other 2 cost or even 3 cost. 2 and 3 cost are very close, but the damage that this guy does seems very underwhelming. Very similar to the Spiralings in terms of just the poison damage that you can get through. That's another reason why I just didn't put a lot of effort into this guy. I feel like I've been using other units so much just because they have overall presence and overall usefulness much more comparable to the Plague Farmer. It doesn't feel like it's worth it. The Ogre Mage out of 5 cost, he always seems to be annoying when I'm fighting him. Wherever I see him on the board, I fight enemies. The Ogre Mage seems to be like, okay, looks such a good unit, but again, it's a 5 cost. I can compare the Pyromancer. If we compare that to the Ogre Mage, basically do the same thing. Of course, the damage is going to be a little bit higher on the Ogre because of the 5 cost, but again, like the Pyromancer, I have them at level 14, 431 DPS. And if we have a look at the Ogre, they're standing at what, the 5 cost, they're standing at a 478. It's just not there. The cost is too high. It feels like it should have been better. It does have Bloodlust, but again, the buff that you can apply potentially, it comes at a very high cost, and this unit, if it dies, you just lose out on that one. So you have to plan it very carefully on when to use the Ogre Mage over there in order to get the full benefit out of this one. The Molten Giant, another big unit that I hate to fight in PvE, but it seems to be not just a PvE thing. You don't see this one so much in PvP. It has a very high cost, very big risk to reward when you use these high cost units. Again, like a Banshee, you can just steal it if the enemy is using Banshees. It is a very strong unit, very strong unit, very tanky, but it feels like you can use so much different things in order to push through. It's a single target DPS unit. It doesn't have a lot of damage, so you'll need to bring in some damage leader together with it, and at high cost of 6, it just feels like you don't have enough time to drop this one plus other units before the enemy overpowers you with multiple units that can actually take out a single target damage dealing unit, and it's very easily distracted by other stuff. So it's not like the Earth Elemental with the Earth Elemental rushes on towers. The Angry Chickens, no matter how much I love this as being part of the game, and I love seeing it, in different maps that I'm doing in PvE. And when I'm pushing, it just, again, it feels like the angry chickens should have been maybe out of one cost, maybe have 1 or 2 chickens less, just so it's not that crazy. It does definitely feel like it has its uses against those big targets that can only single target. So you can use like the angry chickens against the molten giant or on an elf elemental and do some work. But again, it feels like you won't see it on the board so much, because at the 2 cost, these are so easily distracted and dead with such a low amount of health that you just lose out. And with only 6 minis available for you to choose from, it feels like you have much better choices to do and much better options at the 2 cost. So I would rather go with other units, especially like the quill boar, instead of that one, and just go along with those kind of decks. The next spell that I will say doesn't feel that good. It does have its uses, definitely has its uses. Cheat Death is a skill that keeps your units alive beyond the final hit. So let's say they would have taken 2 hits today. As you see here in the preview, it just again feels like it's not enough. Having a 3 cost spell in order to prevent death from your units needs to be done at the specific time in order to get that one last hit through, to not go through, so you get that full benefit out of your units killing the enemy unit. But again, it's very situational, and this is the problem with this spell. Since it's so situational, when you do apply it and it doesn't work, you just immediately lost 3 cost. So it feels like such a high risk to reward that other spells or even other units are much better used for within the game. And then finally, Holy Nova is another spell. Again, all of these spells, I just hate them. Generally, spells, I hate using them in the game. It feels like they need a little bit of a buff, or maybe synergies with the leaders in order for them to be used much more often. But anyway, Holy Nova, it's if you've known the Warcraft games, you know what this is. It does damage, plus it heals your own unit. It has a high cost. It has very specific usefulness. You need to have your units down, fighting the enemy units in order to get the full benefit out of this one. It's not like other spells where you do just strictly damage. It also heals you. So it's not that strong of a spell. It's not that strong of a heal to only use it as a healing spell. It's a mixture between the two. So obviously they couldn't make it stronger on both sides. And that's why I don't feel like using it so much, because it's a mediocre spell. It has its usefulness, especially if you're using multiple units together and you're just rushing it a big bunch of enemies. Then yeah, you see full value out of the Holy Nova there, where you get big heals, big damage. You feel like that was worth it, but that doesn't always happen. You don't know what kind of decks the enemy is going to be using, if they're using very high cost units, if they're using very spread out tactics for split pushing. So again, you just go with how you feel like, and use some other spells or units that will get you more benefit more consistently, so you don't need to go about changing your decks for your favorite leader all the time. So guys, this was the video for Warcraft Rumble, going over the bottom 10, the top 10 of the worst minis that I've seen, on minis and spells that I've been playing with, or actually not playing with, since I've been covering this on this game on this channel. I've been playing it a lot. I've been doing a lot of fights, and I've been seeing the value out of the good minis and the bad minis. So I think this top 10 of the worst list is actually really valid. Let me know your thoughts down below. Thanks again to Warcraft Rumble for sponsoring today's video and the channel. Thank you guys, and I will see you in the next one. See ya.